Hi, I've labeled the sessions that I'm going to be sharing this information in as a Debt Elimination Wealth Accumulation Boot Camp, and I've subtitled it A Foundation for Financial Freedom. It's just me here in my dining room, no fancy TV stage set, no expensive lights, cameras, or recording equipment, just me and my laptop, an integrated camera. Technology really is a marvelous thing. So I encourage you, though, if you want to reap the full benefit of the information I will be sharing in these sessions, do not try to multitask while you're listening. In other words, don't be texting and checking emails and posting pictures and updating your status on your Facebook, or all you will have done is to have heard information. Two important things you need to know here before we begin. The Bible does not say that the truth will set you free. What it does say is that you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. The implication being that only the truth you know will make you free. To know the truth, number one, I said two important things. Number one is to know the truth is to be intimately acquainted with it to the degree that you govern your life in accord or in accordance with it. In other words, it's not a superficial, casual relationship with truth that is going to change you. You understand? It's an intimate acquaintance. It's an intimate association and a progressive revelation of truth that's going to make you free. And in this case, we're talking about freedom from debt. And number two, notice that it does not say, the Bible does not say that the truth will set you free. Rather, it says that it will make you free. For most, it will be a process, not an event. If you're trying to watch TV or playing video games and other things while you're listening here, you will not become intimately acquainted enough with the truth to the degree that it will make you free. This is a boot camp. It's not a conference or a seminar. So get your Bible out, get your notebook, paper, and pen out, and get ready to receive revelation and impartation, and not just information. Place a demand on the information that I'm sharing with you. You will only get out of this what you put into it. The Bible says that my people perish for a lack of knowledge. It also says that my people are taken into captivity for a lack of knowledge. Notice, this is God talking about His people, not unbelievers, not infidels, not heretics, not pagans. Well, if what you know is not working for you, then you may need to know something more. And I can assure you, you will if you do not approach these sessions casually. I charge you to be intentional and strategic with these sessions, because my ultimate goal is to not only see you become debt-free, but also a goal is to accumulate the wealth necessary to fund the end-time kingdom advance that God has called us, His church, to be a part of. Let me share a quick testimony with you, tell you a little about myself for you that are watching this and don't know anything about me. I was married in March of 1992. And in December of 1991, I had signed my name on a 30-year mortgage in preparation for the upcoming marriage. And this mortgage was for a brand new upscale townhouse on Belmont Trace in Tallahassee, Florida. And I'll never forget the lump in my throat as I signed that document that said that I would make payments, monthly payments, for this place over the next 30 years. I believe I was 28 or 29 years old at the time, and I remember thinking, wow, I will be almost 60 when I finish paying for this place. But God had other things in mind, as He often does. And to make a long story short, in December of 1996, almost exactly 5 years into that 30-year mortgage, we paid that townhouse off. And our little family was growing. Our daughter came along in 1994. Son came along in 1995. We began house hunting for something larger and found a nice 4-bedroom brick house off of Willamette Road in Tallahassee. We proceeded to purchase that home with a sizable down payment made from the sale of the townhouse. But we still had a mortgage, and we moved into that home in August of 1997. Long story short, in December of 1998, 16 months into that mortgage, we paid that house off. And in fact, we still own that house in Tallahassee, and we rent it out for income. So shortly after we did that, the pastor of the church where I was attending and also working and serving as church administrator, I believe, associate pastor, worship leader, small church, so we were wearing many hats. But he asked me to share with our church how we got out of debt. And I developed that information and shared that over about a 6-week period. And that was back in the 90s. I was in my 30s when we made that paid those first 2 houses off. And so this information, it's timeless truth. And it's information that's been developing now over 20 years. So this is what I plan to share with you in these series of videos. It's not speculation or conjecture. It's not my idea of what I think may work. What I will be sharing are tried and true principles, but it'll be up to you whether or not you activate and put into action what I share. The Bible talks about people who are not doers of the word, but hearers only. And the Bible says that these people deceive themselves. I preached this series in our church in Tallahassee years ago called Keys to Success. And the 2 keys are simple. Well, let me say it this way. They are simple to say, not always as simple to do. But here they are. There are only 2 of them. Keys to success in life. Are you ready for them? Number 1, hearing from God. Number 2, doing what He says. Now, there's a whole lot wrapped up in that. So it sounds really easy to say, well, here's your keys to success, hearing from God and doing what He says. But you've got to learn how to hear from God. And there's a whole message and series we could develop on that. There are books written on that. How to hear from God. How to hear from Him. But in addition to that, the action part is ours. We have to act on what we hear from God. All right? So with that in mind, let's briefly discuss the origin of the word mortgage. Let me ask you a quick question. Do you know what that word means? I am a student of word origins or etymology. How did the term originate? Because if you can find how a word came to be, sometimes there's historical significance in the meaning of that word, because that's usually when it is the most significant, when that term originated or is created. And for instance, with relation to the word mortgage, let me show you. I'm looking for my glasses and I don't see them. Here they are. Let me show you what this says, and I'm going to put it up in the camera for you to see for yourself so you can read it and show that I'm not lying. This is a dictionary of word origins. All right, see that? And Philosophical Library, written by Shipley. And on page 235, look at this definition of the word mortgage. It says, when an impoverished heir, eldest son of a noble, trying to read it and all at the same time. Okay, where'd it go? Okay, here we are. When an impoverished heir, eldest son of a noble, wished to borrow money, he would sign a pledge to pay when he came to the estate. That is, when his father died. This was called a mortgage, death pledge. Think of the 2 words, mortgage, mort as in mortician, which is someone who deals with dead people, or mortify, which means to put to death. Okay, and then the word gage, as in engagement, of pledge. So you put the 2 words together. Mortgage literally means a death pledge. With that in mind, let me ask you this. How many have an ultimate goal in life to be debt-free? Think about it. Is not that like the epitome of your dreams? I know it used to be mine. Wouldn't it be wonderful to not have that house payment every month? To not have that car payment every month? To not have that college loan payment every month? And think about if you were still receiving the same income you're receiving now, if you're receiving an income, and did not have those payments to make every month, what a significant difference that would make in your life. So that's a nice goal, right? To become debt-free. But do you realize that when you finally pay off your last debt, all you have done is get back to even? You started off down here in debt. And you work hard, work harder, faster, save, pay off debts, and finally you pay off those debts and become debt-free, and all you've done, now you're back to even. So please don't let your goal in life be to get back to even. You've got to dream bigger than that. With that in mind, now let's talk about some specific ways to obtain increase. And some of these overlap to some degree, and you may come up with some that I came up with. These are some that I came up with, a list of 8 many, many years ago. 8 ways that you can obtain increase into your life. Number 1, you can earn it. You can earn increase or income through a salary, promotions, commissions, investments. You could sell something, an invention. All of those I've lumped under the category of earning increase. All right. Here's the second way. Second way to obtain increase. You can steal it. You can counterfeit money. You can rob someone's house. You can steal a car and sell it. All right. So the second way you can obtain increase is to steal it. You can earn it. You can steal it. Third way, you can win it, which is you could win the lottery. You could win a sweepstakes. That's the third way. Fourth way, you could marry into it. I've known some people that have done that. Number 5, you can inherit it, which could include being beneficiary of a life insurance policy or actually being an heir to someone's inheritance. Number 6, you can fund it. You see people out on the beach with their little metal detectors. You see people that walk into Goodwill stores and buy, $10,000 paintings for $10. Those kinds of things. So Peter found the tribute money in the fish's mouth. So that's the 6th way. You can find it. The seventh way is you can receive it as like a gift, or supernatural increase may come through one of the ways above. So it's a receiving aspect of obtaining increase into your life. And lastly, number 8, we cannot forget here in the good old USA, you can sue someone for it, or sue a company or a business for it. So those are 8 ways that I know of that you can obtain increase in your life. Now let's talk about, with regards to obtaining increase, let me give you a principle. Principle number 1, start where you are. Now we're going to talk about getting out of debt, okay? Remember though, that is not our ultimate goal here. It's a good goal, but it's not our ultimate goal. So let's talk about starting where you are. My wise old granddaddy used to say, son, no matter where you go in life, there you are. Now, that sounds kind of silly, but there's a whole lot of truth to that saying. We have these grandiose ideas and pie-in-the-sky ideals that we're somehow going to get immediately out of debt, supernatural. And I'm not saying that can't happen. I've seen God do some miraculous things in people's lives with regards to debt. But if you're not there today, it ain't happening for you now. And let's start today, right now, where we are. I still remember my first consumer loan. In fact, I'm a pack rat of sorts, and I actually went out to my archives, which is a filing cabinet in my garage, and I found the loan document for my first consumer loan. I was moving to Atlanta. I think I was about 22 years old. This was in 1985, and I borrowed $1,500 from my credit union to move to Atlanta and get settled. Now, let me show you something here real quick. I'll never forget when I started making payments on this loan. I was so ignorant and naive at 22. And I'll never forget when I made my first payment. When you make a payment at your bank or your credit union, you get a little stub back that tells you the amount you paid and that kind of thing. And I'll never forget this, my first one, I believe, that I made in January of 1986. And I made my payment. And I'll never forget, my payment was $50.73. Okay? Now, when I got my pay stub back, take a look at this. I don't know if you can see this or not. But you see it says that $30.51 went to principal and $20.22 went to interest. And I'll never forget asking my dad, why If I paid $50.73, why did not they reduce my balance by $50.73? And at that point, I was introduced to a term called interest, and I didn't like it. And I set out on a journey in life at that point to learn how to make interest, one, not work against me, but work for me. Because I figured it this way: if I'm paying somebody $20.22 for this, I'm paying it, somebody's making it. Why shouldn't it be me making that $20.22 rather than paying it? So I was an immediate enemy of something called interest. But you know what? So when we moved into our house, that was my first exposure to the term interest. So when I bought that house, the first townhouse, in December of 1991, and I knew I would be paying interest. By that point, I had gained a little bit of an education about how these things work, and I knew I would be paying interest. Wasn't happy about it, didn't like it, but did I have the money to pay cash for that house? No. But I began to examine and see how really simple it was to make just a little bit of an extra payment every month, a payment towards the principal of that townhouse, and save myself tens of thousands of dollars in interest. You hear me? Tens of thousands of dollars by making minimal extra payments every month. So by the time we moved into that second house in Florida, the 4-bedroom brick house, there was no way I would be satisfied with paying that off over a 30-year period. My point is this: I'm talking about starting where you are. I didn't start paying off new 2-story townhouses in 5 years or 4-bedroom brick houses in a year and a half. I started by paying off a $1,500 loan in a year. You understand what I'm talking about? You are where you are. You can't begin where you're not. Start where you are. Increase comes in stages, each stage building upon the previous. You must crawl before you can walk, and you've got to walk before you can run. By the time we bought that house in August of 1997, there was no way I would be satisfied with waiting 30 years to pay it off. Why? Romans 5:4 says that experience worketh hope. Because I had previous experiences of paying things off early, unlike most Americans, unlike the average consumer, and I'll deal with that word in a moment, those experiences worked to produce a hope or an expectation in me that I could do the same with our house. And my hope or my expectation was not disappointed. Now let's talk about the word average for a moment. Average is the worst of the best and the best of the worst. It's no farther from or closer to the top than it is from the bottom. Think about that. Average is the worst of the best and the best of the worst. Most people in America, by definition, are average. They're average consumers. They're average. They work on average jobs. They receive average incomes. That's just the way the word most and average work together. I don't have time to go into all the mathematical, normal distributions and get into statistics and things like that. But your enemy is average. And in fact, John Mason, I meant to bring the copy of that book with me. Maybe I'll bring it next time and show you. John Mason wrote a book called, I believe it was called An Enemy Called Average. And when I read that book back in probably the 90s, I believe, that book revolutionized my life because it showed me how words like the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is that little word extra on the front. You know that you can be an extraordinary employee on your job by doing just that little bit extra. It doesn't take much to distinguish yourself from the average employee or worker on your job in America. Getting to work on time every day. will probably set you apart from most of them. Staying the full time, taking an hour for lunch break and not for your lunch break and not an hour and a half if you're given an hour, or you're taking 30 minutes if they give you 30 minutes and not taking 45 minutes. Think about what the average worker does with you on your job. So it doesn't take a whole lot to distinguish yourself from the average employee in America. And let me tell you something, if you distinguish yourself from the average employee, it will bring promotion and increase into your life. Do I really know what I'm talking about? Let me give you an example. Let me tell you about one of my job histories, which forever colored the remainder of how I view income and outgo in a home or business. A couple of different points I want to make with this history. I went to work for a company in 1986 making $4.10 an hour. I was hired as a quality control technician. And when I started that job, the extent of my knowledge concerning quality control was when I would put my hands into a pair of new pants and pull a piece of paper out of that pocket that said inspected by number 10. That was about all I knew about quality control. But I went through the job service of Florida there in Perry, and they gave me a call not long after I went for that, filled out an application there, and they asked me, would you be interested in inspecting what other people make? I'm like, I guess so. I don't really even know what that means, but I'll go check it out. So I went to work at that company for $4.10 an hour. Now, over the course of the next 6 years, I became entrenched in the quality control and quality assurance culture and philosophy. I read books, I attended seminars and trainings, I worked my way from quality control technician to quality control supervisor, eventually to a position they created for me as quality assurance manager of the plant that reported only to the quality control or assurance director and the president of the company. All of that with an associate's degree. Okay? Now, I even became certified with the American Society of Quality Control as a quality assurance engineer. During my tenure there, the majority of my responsibilities entailed studying and examining manufacturing processes to create a quality product with optimum levels of process scrap and waste. Now notice I said optimum levels, not maximum or minimum, as it relates to a manufacturing process. In other words, we could create a $10 product and generate 50 cents worth of scrap, which is more optimum than creating a $10 product with no scrap if it cost us $15 to create that $10 product. You understand what I'm saying? Now, two things I want to point out about that experience. When I went to work there for $4.10 an hour, I'll never forget it. 3 months, my boss, the quality control supervisor, came and told me, guess what? You're about to get your 3-cent raise. And I said, my what? He said, your 3-cent raise. Everybody that's been here 3 months gets 3 cents. I said, you've got to be kidding me. And I knew then something had to change. So I began to enact exactly the principles that I'm telling you here and began to distinguish myself from average employees. Okay? Did you hear what I said earlier about me becoming entrenched in the philosophy? I read books. I attended seminars. I went to trainings. Most of the employees weren't doing that. They weren't interested in doing that. They were very content right where they are. Well, I use the word content rather loosely because most of them grumbled and complained all the time. Something I didn't do. But this philosophy, real quick before I get back to this, what that did was, as I said, distinguishing yourself from the average employee will bring promotions and increase your way. So the $4.10 an hour job that was going to entail a 3-cent raise at 3 months, and I think another 3 cents at 6 months, and I think maybe 3 or 4 or 5 cents at a year. It was ridiculous. When I left that job 6 years later in 1992, I had received the equivalent of a 100% increase every year that I was there. So, again, this is not something that I'm telling you as speculation or that might work for you. I'm telling you what will work for you from my own experience. And Also, as a result of that experience there, this philosophy of abhorrence for waste and the desire for optimum spilled over into my household finances, and I began to look at things a whole new way as a result of my experience there. Not to get into all of the details at this point, because we will discuss this principle further, but God looks for optimum as well. What do I mean by that? He calls it in His Word faithful stewardship. A faithful steward does not squander or waste his owner's goods. And when the steward is faithful with his owner's goods, then the owner rewards this faithfulness with increase. Listen to this from Luke 16. Luke 16:1 says, "And he said unto his disciples, There was a certain rich man which had a steward, and the same was accused unto him that he had wasted his goods. And he called him and said unto him, How is it that I hear this of thee? Give an account of thy stewardship, for thou mayest be no longer steward. Then the steward said within himself, What shall I do? For my Lord taketh away from me the stewardship. I cannot dig to beg. I am ashamed. I am resolved what to do, that when I am put out of the stewardship, they may receive me into their houses. So he called me every one of my Lord's debtors unto him, and said unto the first, How much owest thou unto my Lord? And he said, 100 measures of oil. And he said unto him, Take your bill, and sit down quickly, and write 50. Then said he to another, And how much do you owe? And he said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said unto him, Take your bill, and write 80. And the Lord commended the unjust steward, because he had done wisely. For the children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light. And I say unto you, make to yourselves friends of the mammon of unrighteousness, that when you fail, they may receive you into everlasting habitations. He that is faithful," listen to this, "he that is faithful in that which is least is faithful also in much. And he that is unjust in the least is unjust also in much. If therefore you have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, who will commit to your trust the true riches? And if you have not been faithful in that which is another man's," your employers, your company or business owners, "who shall give you that which is your own?" With that in mind, let's talk about a way of looking at things that you might not have considered, and it's a mindset that we adopted as a family as we were working towards freedom from debt. It's a simple concept that will increase your bottom line, and when handled properly, can cause you to have money left over at the end of your month, instead of having month left over at the end of your money, which most or average Americans do. Month after month after month, robbing Peter to pay Paul, one paycheck away from being unable to make their mortgage payment or their insurance payment. So listen to this. If you want to increase your increase, then decrease your decrease. Think about that. Let me say that again. If you want to increase your increase, then decrease your decrease. Here's another way to say it. Income, this is a mathematical expression, income minus outgo, or your expenses, equals either a plus or a minus. It's either a surplus or a deficit. If you let me use some numbers. Okay, let's say your monthly household income is $1,000. All right, and then your expenses are $800. Okay, then if you have your income of $1,000, your expenses of $800, then at the end of the month you have a $200 surplus, right? But if it goes the other way, let's say your income is $800 and your expenses are $1,000, then at the end of the month, you have $200. You're scrambling around trying to postpone a payment till you get next week's paycheck and that kind of thing. And that, unfortunately, is where most of America lives, from paycheck to paycheck. Bob Harrison used to say this. He says, when your outgo exceeds your income, then your upkeep will be your downfall. Aristotle said in 4th century BC, men become wealthier not only by adding to what they already possess, but by cutting down expenses. Let me say that again. This is Aristotle in 4th century BC. Men become wealthy not only by adding to what they already possess, but by cutting down expenses. I hate waste. That was entrenched in me for 6 years, from a quality control technician to a quality assurance supervisor to a quality control manager to a quality assurance engineer. I looked at process after process after process with nothing in mind, but I had got to trim the waste off of this product, be it operator error, be it things on the machine breaking down, maintenance needing to be called, all of those kinds of things that accumulated what were called scrap costs. So again, looking at that in the household, you have the same thing going. Your household is a process. Money comes in the door. That's income, whether it's alimony payments, or your job, or you're out collecting aluminum cans and selling them. However income comes into your house, that's the income. The outgo, what are you paying every month? You've got your grocery bills, you've got your car payments, you've got your automobile, your gas, repairs, those kinds of things. So that's the outgo of the process. And at the end of the month or week or whatever time frame you choose to look at, that is a constant equation working in the process of your home. And I hate waste in my household process as much as I hated it, learned to hate it there in that quality assurance manufacturing environment. So let's think about it this way. Mathematically speaking, now I said income minus outgo equals either a surplus or a deficit. Mathematically speaking, only by adjusting the first item, which is income, or the second item, which is outgo, can you affect the other side of the equation. That's just how math works. Let me say it another way. To adjust the result, which is the surplus or the deficit, you will either have to make more, obtain increase in one of the 8 ways we discussed earlier, or some other way that you come up with, or you're going to have to spend less, or a combination of the two. There is no alternative, period. I'm a black and white kind of person. I don't do gray areas very well. I never did. So that's why I always liked math. It's always very exact and precise. Now let's suppose I were to give you a $1,000 bonus right now. $1,000 a month, okay? And then let's just say $1,000 per year. We won't say $1,000 a month. Let's say I give you $1,000. Here you go. Now, if you run to Best Buy and purchase a large screen TV and surround sound system, say, for exactly $1,000, and you put that on your credit card that carries 18% interest, are you getting the picture? Have you broken even? No. You've gone in the hole, because now you will be paying interest on that $1,000. And I've seen this happen over and over and over in our consumer-driven society. There is one problem that America has, and it's a serious problem. We do not do well at delaying gratification. You ever heard the term retail therapy? People want to go to the mall. People want to go to the electronics store. People got to have the newest phone, newest technology. I want it, and I want it now. We're like a bunch of babies. Give it to me, and give it to me now. You know the first words that came out of the prodigal son's mouth, for the most part? He said, give me, give me, give me, give me. And that's where America is today. We're a constant give me society. I want it now, even if it means I have to take this product that's on sale, $200 off, say a couch, $200 off of the original price, but I put it on an installment plan, and by the time I finish paying off that installment plan, I've paid twice what the original price was of the couch. But that's okay. I got my couch and I got it now. I hope you're catching the philosophy and the spirit of this, because it's a mindset that is going to have to change if you were going to ever truly accumulate significant wealth in your life. So let's talk about outgo, or rather, let's see what the Bible has to say about outgo. How about we do that? Haggai 1:6 says this. Get your Bible out. Look this up. Haggai 1:6 says this. You have sown much, and you bring in little, but you have not enough. You drink, but you are not filled with drink. You clothe you, but there is none warm. And he that earns wages to put it into a bag with holes. Now listen to the spirit of that verse. What is it talking about here? So same thing I was talking about a moment ago, about being able to delay gratification gracefully. You've so much, bring in little. You eat, but you have not enough. You're not satisfied. You drink, but you're not filled with drink. You're not satisfied. You clothe you, but there is none warm. You're not satisfied. Isaiah talks about in the last days, people will be like laying in bed, and the bed's too short. I forget exactly the terminology. The bed's too short, or the sheet's too short, or something like that. What's it talking about? Just a constant discomfort, a constant dissatisfaction. And I deal day after day after day, no matter where I am, what city I live in, what church I attend, people are so dissatisfied. We haven't learned, like Paul said, to learn whatever state we are in to be content. And because we're not content, we feel like accumulating more things into our life will make us happier. And it's not. It's almost an addiction and an adrenaline rush. I've seen people do that with the latest technology. I've got to have the latest phone, the latest iPad, the latest iPod, and it's nothing more than an adrenaline rush and the joy of opening that up and playing with the product. And then, in a week, 2 weeks, a month down the road, that feeling is gone. Excuse me. And then they're on looking for what's next. What's next? We do movies that way. We've got to watch the latest movie out. We've got to have the latest CD out. We've got to have the latest style. We've got to have the latest purse. We've got to have the best shoes. The stylish shoes, the jeans. You look at it in America primarily. I don't know. I've been out of the country to lots of different countries, but most of the countries I've been to have been third world countries, so I don't know what takes place in countries like Asia and Japan, or Japan and China, and some of those countries that are more modern. But I know, countries that I do travel to, they don't have this philosophy because they just can't afford it. But in America, we'll work, 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 and we're living Haggai 1:6. Sowing much, bringing in little, eating, but not enough, drinking, not filled with drink, clothed, but not warm, and we earn wages and put it in a bag with holes. A bag with holes sounds like outgo to me. In Malachi 3:1, God says, I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes. And he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground, neither shall your vine cast her fruit before the time in the field, says the Lord of hosts. We're talking about outgo now. That sounds like outgo to me. Things are being devoured. And God says he will rebuke the one that is doing the devouring for our sakes. Think about that. I've had experience after experience after experience where things have been devoured from my life unjustly. Okay? Not fairly, not justly. And I've gone back and placed a demand on that and have received increase in my life where the devourer has stolen from me. And Malachi 3 talks about, that we'll receive a blessing that there's not room enough to receive it. But most of the church stops there, and they're all about the blessing that there's not room enough to receive it. But the blessing that's not room enough to receive it does absolutely no good for you or your life or your family or your kids or your church or the kingdom of God if it's being devoured, if it's coming in the front door and going out the back door. You understand what I'm saying? So we need to get a hold of this concept that of outgo is just as significant and is as important as the income. Ecclesiastes 5:11 says this, when goods increase, they are increased that eat them. And what good is there to the owners thereof, saving the beholding of them with their eyes? Listen to this verse from the Message. The more loot you get, the more looters show up. And what fun is that? To be robbed in broad daylight? Let's talk about some things that eat our goods. All right, we're talking about outgo, devourers, holes in bags. Here's one. How about taxes? The IRS, good old IRS. Congress has got what it takes to take what you've got. What can you do about your taxes? I've transitioned through the years, and I remember way back in the day, listen, most Americans, the average American, this is how they view their income taxes. They want to fill out their W-4 in such a way that come April 15th, they file their return and they get a sizable increase. They're all about, I want a big refund from the IRS. That's the word I'm looking for. I want a big refund. And when I figured out how this worked years ago and realized this refund I'm getting from the IRS, that's been mine all year long. And I've been paying them, and they've been using my money all year long, interest-free, not paid me a dime for it. That's not right. So I went from that philosophy of thinking I really want a big refund after I file my income tax return to trying to get it reduced to around zero. I just want to break even. Again, that break-even philosophy. But then when I really saw the power of this, I know this is going to shake your paradigm, but this is where I am. It is my delight every year to see if I can produce the largest tax payment that I can make. I want to owe the IRS as much as I can owe them come April 15th. Now that shakes you up, doesn't it? I know. I sound crazy, don't I? But what does that mean? That means, now I don't want to pay penalties or interest, okay? You understand? I'm talking, and there are ways you have to figure that out if you know what you're doing with taxes, and I don't want to get into all of that. But I do want to pay them, come April 15th, I want to pay them as much as I can legally owe them without paying penalties or interest. Why? Because now I have used IRS money all year long. And I've done things with that money. I've invested it. I've invested it in the stock market or other things. So that's something for you to think about. I'm talking about the IRS as being one of the things that is taking and using your money, not taking advantage of all of the tax deductions, filing forms or not filing forms that you should or shouldn't file. Take every tax loophole you can. Don't cheat on your taxes, because God doesn't honor that. But take every advantage you can. And if you don't know what they are, get a professional. And you better find a professional you can trust. I'm not big on the H&R Blocks and those kinds of places, quite honestly, because I've used them, and I find more deductions than they do. They're usually, for the most part, hiring part-time tax people who they've ran through a 3, 4, 5, 6-week course on how to file income tax returns, and somebody opts for that part-time job come tax season. Most of them are not tax professionals. So find one that is a tax professional, and find one that is, if at all possible, is acquainted with the kind of income you're receiving. For instance, myself, I've received ministry income most of my life. Your average, everyday Joe Blow attorney on the corner is not familiar enough with ministry income and nonprofit status income and parsonage or housing allowance and those kinds of things to really take advantage of every tax deduction that you're allowed. So those are just a couple points on that. One, now do you realize that even those in the world system operate in some of the principles with a lot more wisdom than we do as the children of the King? And that's exactly what Luke 16:8 says that I read earlier. It says, the Lord commended the unjust steward because he had done unwisely. For the children of this world are in their generation wiser than the children of light. I'm going to share one more principle, and then we're going to call it a night since I've gone about 45 minutes. Second thing that will eat your lunch or devour you or cause you to have income and put it in a bag with holes in it. Interest. I would recommend, a lot of people ask me through the years, what do I invest in? What stocks do I buy? Yada, yada, yada. No, if you owe credit card debt, pay off your credit card before you invest anything. Why? Because usually your credit card, I don't know what they're running now. We don't ever pay credit card interest. I haven't paid credit card interest in years, although we use our credit cards every month and max them out, or try to, because we receive the benefits of their cash bonuses, or airline miles, those kinds of things. We buy groceries, we pay our utilities, everything we can. And then I pay well, actually we pay three different credit cards every month, and I pay them off every month. So because I refuse to pay them a dime of interest, but I take advantage of their benefits program, and they pay me money or airline miles and those kinds of things. So I don't really know what the rate is on a credit card. I don't know. It's 13, 14, 15, 18%. I don't know, but let's say that it's 18%. Here are 3 reasons why you will want to pay those credit cards off before you invest. Okay, you can write this down. Number 1, you receive a guaranteed rate of return. You receive a guaranteed rate of return, and it's usually higher than you could earn yourself in the amount of time that it takes you to pay it off. In other words, if it's 18%, I'm not saying I can't make 18% in the market, but most average Americans will not. They won't make 18% because, you know, it's pretty involved. The old buy and hold it philosophy of market investing is done. Okay, that worked in the last 30, 40, 50 years, but you can't do that anymore. I'm not a day trader, but you do have to have some level of market timing if you're going to, at least in my experience, if you're going to make any significant return on your investment in the market. And not everybody knows how to do that. Not everybody even cares to know how to do that. So again, it's a guaranteed rate of return that's usually higher than you could earn it yourself in the amount of time it takes you to pay that credit card off. Number 2, there's zero risk. There's zero risk with you paying your credit card off. Okay? Unlike my portfolio that's in the market every day, I know what the risk is. Okay? And we could have a 9/11 like we had and see the stock market crash. It happens, and that's just the risk I take for being in the market, and I understand that. But I don't have any debt to pay, so I can't take advantage of that. But if you have debt on your credit card, pay it off, because there's zero risk involved with you paying that off. Number 3, that payment you're making on your credit card is non-taxable, unlike the short-term and long-term investments that I make in the market, and I have to pay money. I have to pay the IRS. I have to pay taxes on every dime I make in the market every year. Okay? Whereas as opposed to you paying off your credit card, it's non-taxable. The IRS, at least as of yet, has not found a way to tax this money that you saved, because you saved it, you didn't earn it. But a penny saved is a penny earned. All right? We're going to pick up next time with talking about waste, because I'm going to share a few things about waste that are probably going to bring shed some light on your thoughts about this whole income outgo process. All right, it's been a pleasure sharing with you, and look forward next time to session number 2 of Debt Elimination Wealth Accumulation Boot Camp. See you then.